You are not trying to fix this bill for mom and pops, and we have to fight to fund hospitals.
Having already passed the Senate, the House is set to pass a new stimulus bill. Sounds awesome, right? Of course not. There's still no universal basic income, still no rent freeze, still no much of anything for actual people that are struggling. So AOC was on the floor of the House and ripped apart Republicans and this bill. Watch.
The gentlewoman from New York is recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And on behalf of my constituents in the Bronx and Queens, New York's 14th congressional district, the most impacted district in America, calling people losing their families every day. It is a joke when Republicans say that they have urgency around this bill. The only folks that they have urgency around are folks like Ruth's Chris Steakhouse and Shake Shack. Those are the people getting assistance in this bill. You are not trying to fix this bill for mom and pops, and we have to fight to fund hospitals, fighting to fund testing. That is what we're fighting for in this bill. It is unconscionable. If you had urgency, you would legislate like rent was due on May 1st and make sure that we include rent and mortgage relief for our constituents. Thank you very much.
This was awesome. Now, as usual, AOC, one of the few voices in the House actually willing to get angry, visibly angry and animated over issues like this. That said, of course, she could widen her criticism a little bit to include Democrats as well. Now, I understand, strategically, maybe she feels that isn't smart to do that. Maybe she thinks, hey, if I go after Nancy Pelosi publicly, it's not going to accomplish anything for me. I understand that. But just so you know, it isn't just Republicans that have screwed this up. It's also Democrats, and especially Democratic leadership like Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer. And what she was saying here is exactly right. Let me just bring up the point she made about Shake Shack and Ruth's Chris. So this from Business Insider. Shake Shack returned its $10 million coronavirus stimulus loan. Ruth's Chris, Potbelly, and other chains are keeping more than $81 million meant for struggling small businesses. So I'll have some more examples in a minute, but this is where the money's going. It's going to these chains. It's not going to these small. It's not going to the small companies that really need it, at least at large. A lot of this money really is just going to these massive companies that, yes, I get it. They need the help as well. Fine. But if you're going to help them, you should also be helping the people that actually need it, including actual small businesses and people that are the poor and the middle class that no longer have a check coming in. Some more details here on the bill and how it was pushed through from Robert Kuttner at American Prospect. Once again, Mitch McConnell has played hardball while the Democrats play beanbag. The Senate's $484 billion emergency relief bill, now greased for quick passage in the House tomorrow or today, includes more money for payroll protection, small businesses, hospitals, and testing, but nothing for state and local governments or programs that serve the poor, such as food stamps. Yeah. This is another point I have to make here. Democrats had to fight for hospital funding and more in testing. Like, that was the compromise. It really shows you how far the media and the GOP have pulled the conversation to the right, where hospital funding during a pandemic counts as a compromise. Democratic leadership as well. I mean, it's really on them to set the terms of the discussion. Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi should be on television screaming about what this bill actually does, screaming for help for actual people, calling for a UBI. Let's say that they don't even support a UBI. They should still be on television trying to push the conversation or pull the conversation back to the left so that maybe they'll get something out of it. But when they are giving in, capitulating so much where hospital funding is a compromise, it shows you how weak Democratic leadership is. Now, let me show you another example of how weak it is. Senior writer at Politico, Michael Grunwald. This guy is not a socialist, not a Bernie supporter. He's a big Obama guy. And even he is ripping apart Democrats here. So he tweeted out, Democrats cave. Nothing for states or cities. Nothing for election protection or the post office. No oversight. No limits on fossil fuel bailouts. No food stamps. They got some testing. Somehow that's a GOP concession, but no contact tracing. So when you even have the most establishment status quo journalists tearing apart Democrats for being weak, it shows you how horrible this bill is. Now, we are already seeing the implications of the CARES Act, what it actually did. It had $150 billion in aids to states, which is about 5% of state and local funding. Compare that to up to $4.5 trillion in loans for businesses. So $150 billion in aid to states, $4.5 trillion to businesses. Here's another example of where that money is going. This from David Dayen at the American Prospect. Yesterday, we found out that 2 luxury hotel companies made off with $46 million in PPP forgivable small business loans for such high-end brand locations as Ritz-Carlton, Marriott, and Sofitel. The companies paid a combined $13 million to top executives last year. We know this because Braemar Hotels and Ashford Hospitality Trust were required to disclose the loans in SEC filings. The Fed has not committed to releasing detailed transaction-level information about its lending. It has interpreted the CARES Act disclosure requirements to mean that they only need to give aggregate disclosure of the terms and rules of the various lending facilities they set up, not the names of the individual companies getting the loans. And then every 30 days, they have to supply the total amount lent out and the interest received. So not only is the money also going to places like the Ritz-Carlton, but actually seeing where the money goes is an issue. So even journalists aren't able to, don't have this information readily available. They can do some digging and maybe find where some of it goes, but by and large, they are not able to actually see, for the most part, where the money is going. Showing you, this kind of lack of transparency. A government doesn't do this if they're happy or proud about where the money's going. They do this to hide it from you. They do this so you do not know where the money's actually going. Again, all the while, people on the ground actually struggling, unable to afford food, can't pay the rent. Now, I want to go back to AOC just to end on here, because I saw this tweet come up, and this is brilliant what her office is doing. So this was tweeted out by Nicole Schumann saying, "So I just received an actual phone call from a real person volunteering for AOC's office asking if I needed anything. Groceries, medication, etc. They are calling all constituents. I almost cried on the phone. Thankfully, we are all set, but this is such a wonderful outreach." So this is something, as a Torontonian, this is something Rob Ford did back when he was mayor. Now, Rob Ford was not a good mayor politically, what he actually did, but one of the ways he was able to build support for himself, really solid support, was that he gave his phone number out. So it at least gave the appearance that he was fighting for people. In this case, AOC is actually fighting for people, and they are actually delivering groceries, medication, and other necessities to people that need it. So this is a brilliant move, not only just morally, but politically, because this really creates this genuine connection with the people, with your representative in Congress. More people should be doing this. More politicians need to understand the importance of having this real connection to people that are in their district. So, look, overall, I'll have criticisms of AOC when I think her strategy is a little off, which I have in the past. I did a recent video criticizing her, but this is what she said here on the floor is great. I hope she's also fighting behind the scenes, fighting Democrats behind the scenes. I think she is, but just a lot of that fight she may not want to take public. It's a different strategy, but you can understand it, maybe. By and large, though, when you only have a few fighters like AOC, Bernie Sanders, Rashida Tlaib, Ro Khanna, Ilhan Omar, there's only so much they can do when they're just grossly outnumbered.